6 months had passed since the Galactic Unity Ceremony. The galaxy had changed. News of the alliance between Earth and the Valoran Empire spread like fire across the stars. At first, the other species laughed. What could humans possibly offer the most advanced civilization in the known universe? They called it a joke. A desperate queen making friends with primitives. They stopped laughing when the first human ships arrived at Valora. There were only 50 of them, small vessels, barely armed, built with technology 1,000 years behind the Valoran fleet. They should have been embarrassing. They should have been proof that humans had nothing to offer. But aboard those ships were 10,000 volunteers. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, doctors. The best and brightest that Earth had to offer. They had left their homes, their families, their safe little planet to fight an enemy they had never seen for a queen they had never met. And they brought something more valuable than any weapon. They brought ideas. Dr. Hana was the first to make a breakthrough. Working with Valoran researchers, she discovered something that the older species had missed. The shadow creatures from the void were not invincible. They were not even alive, not in the way that normal beings were alive. They were patterns, complex arrangements of dark energy that held together through a force that no one understood. Think of them like knots in a rope, she explained to Queen Nari. The rope is space itself. The creatures are just tangles in the fabric of reality. If we can find a way to untangle them, we can destroy them. The Queen finished. It took another 3 months of work. 3 months of sleepless nights and failed experiments and moments of despair. But the humans refused to give up. When one approach failed, they tried another. When they hit dead ends, they found new paths. Lieutenant Taiho, now Captain Taiho, led the military side of the operation. He trained with Valoran soldiers, learning their tactics and teaching them his own. At first, they looked down on him. His weapons were primitive. His ships were slow. He had never fought in a real space battle, but Taiho showed them something they had never seen before. He showed them how to fight dirty. Valoran tactics are beautiful, he told the Queen one night. Your fleets move like dancers. Every maneuver is perfect, precise, calculated. And that is a problem? It is when you are fighting an enemy that does not follow rules. Taiho pulled up a display showing battle formations. The shadow creatures have no tactics. They just swarm and consume. Your ships try to fight them in organized patterns, and they get overwhelmed. What do you suggest? Taiho smiled. Humans are very good at chaos. He taught the Valoran soldiers guerrilla tactics, hit and run, ambush and retreat, strike where the enemy least expects it. He showed them how to use small ships to distract the shadow creatures while larger weapons were brought to bear. He introduced them to concepts like sacrifice plays and suicide runs, tactics that no Valoran commander would ever consider because they valued their soldiers too much. In human history, we have a saying, Taiho told them. One soldier who is willing to die can defeat 100 who are not. The Valarans did not like this idea. They did not like sending their people to certain death. But they learned. They adapted. And slowly, the tide began to turn. The first real victory came at the Battle of Valora's moon. A swarm of shadow creatures had emerged from the void, larger than any seen before. They headed straight for the Valoran homeworld, aiming to destroy the heart of the Empire. Every species in the galaxy watched as the combined fleet of humans and Valarans moved to intercept. Captain Taiho was on the bridge of the Valoran flagship, standing beside Queen Nari. Around them, officers worked frantically at their stations, coordinating the 1,000 ships under their command. They outnumber us 10 to 1, Admiral Yuna said through the communication screen. She was commanding the human fleet from the carrier Hope. Our new weapons might not be enough. They will be enough, Taiho said. They have to be. Dr. Hana's discovery had led to the creation of a new weapon, a device that could generate a frequency of energy that disrupted the patterns of the shadow creatures. It did not destroy them instantly, but it weakened them, made them vulnerable. For the first time in history, the creatures from the void could be hurt, but the weapons were still experimental. They had only been tested on small creatures. No one knew if they would work against a swarm this size. "All ships, this is Captain Taiho. Prepare to engage." His voice was calm, steady. He did not feel calm or steady. Inside, he was terrified. But he had learned that fear was not the opposite of courage. Fear was what courage was made of. The battle began. It was chaos and fire and death. Ships exploded like stars going dark. Shadow creatures screamed across the void, their forms shifting and twisting as they consumed everything in their path. The new weapons flashed, tearing holes in the creatures' bodies, but there were so many of them. Too many. Taiho watched as human ships threw themselves into the swarm, drawing the creatures away from the larger Valoran vessels. He watched as men and women he had trained, people he had come to call friends, flew into certain death without hesitation. Why? Queen Nari whispered beside him. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with horror. Why do they sacrifice themselves? Because they are buying us time, Taiho said. Because every second they fight is a second the rest of us have to survive. A human ship named Brave dove into the center of the largest shadow creature. The pilot activated every weapon at once in a blinding explosion of light. When the light faded, the creature was gone. So was the ship. "They are insane," a Valoran officer said. "They are human," Taiho replied. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the shadow swarm had been destroyed. The creatures from the void had been stopped for the first time in history. The Valoran homeworld was saved, but the cost was high. Half the human fleet was gone. 3,000 men and women had given their lives. Queen Nari ordered a day of mourning across the entire empire. Every citizen of every world under Valoran rule stopped to remember the humans who had died for them. It was the first time the empire had ever mourned for another species. Galaxy watched in amazement. In the months that followed, more species joined the alliance. The Naruli came first, then the Crystal Collective, then the Iron Alliance. They had all refused to help before. Now, they came begging to stand beside the humans, because the humans had proven something that day. They had proven that the void could be fought, that the shadow creatures could be defeated. That hope was not foolish. They had proven that sometimes the smallest and weakest species could change the fate of the universe. Captain Taiho became a hero. Songs were written about him in a dozen languages. His face appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. He hated the attention, but he accepted it because he knew it was not about him. It was about what he represented. 1 year after the ceremony, Taiho stood on the balcony of the Queen's Palace on Valora. He looked up at the night sky, at the 3 moons that cast silver light across the land, at the stars that seemed close enough to touch. Queen Nari stood beside him. She looked younger than she had a year ago, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "We are going to win," she said. "I really believe that now." "So do I," Taiho said. "Because of your people. Because humans refuse to give up." She turned to look at him. "Do you know what they are calling you now? The other species?" Taiho shook his head. "They call you the stubborn ones. The species that looks at impossible odds and says no." She smiled. "I think it is a compliment." Taiho laughed. "So do I." Somewhere in the darkness, the void still waited. The war was far from over. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, more days of mourning. But for the first time in 1,000 years, the darkness was no longer growing, because humanity had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same. The next 3 days changed Taiho's life forever. Queen Nari brought him to the royal quarters of Station Orion, a place where no outsider had ever been allowed. There, surrounded by guards and advisors who looked at him with confusion and suspicion, she showed him the truth about the void. The images were terrible. On a screen that covered an entire wall, Taiho watched recordings from Valoran ships that had tried to scout the edge of the darkness. He saw planets being swallowed whole, not destroyed, not broken, just gone. One moment, there was a world full of life, and the next moment there was nothing. Like someone had taken an eraser to the universe. He saw the creatures that came from the void. They had no fixed shape. They were like shadows given form, constantly shifting and changing. They could be as small as insects or as large as moons. They moved through space without ships, and they consumed everything they touched. "We have fought them for centuries," Queen Nari said. Her voice was tired. "We have thrown our greatest weapons at them, our strongest ships, our bravest warriors. Nothing works. They cannot be killed. They cannot be stopped. They just keep coming." Taiho watched as a Valoran warship, a vessel half the size of a city, fired every weapon it had at one of the shadow creatures. The beams of energy passed through the creature like light through water. The creature did not even slow down. It wrapped itself around the ship, and within seconds, the ship was gone. "How do you fight something that cannot be hurt?" Taiho asked. "We do not know. That is why we need new ideas, new approaches, new ways of thinking." The queen looked at him. "Other species have had thousands of years to become set in their ways. Humans are new. You have not had time to learn what is impossible. You still believe that anything can be done if you try hard enough." Taiho did not know if that was true, but he understood what the queen was asking for. She wanted hope. She wanted someone to tell her that all was not lost. He wished he could give her that certainty. But he was just one man. "I need to contact Earth," he said. "I need to tell my people what you have shown me." The queen nodded. "I expected you would say that. I have already arranged for a communication link to your planet. You can speak with your leaders whenever you are ready." Taiho took a deep breath. This was the moment. Everything he said now would shape the future of humanity. He walked to the communication terminal and entered his codes. After a few moments of static, a face appeared on the screen. It was Admiral Yuna, the head of Earth's Space Command. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Taiho had met her only once when he had received his orders for this mission. "Lieutenant Taiho," she said, "we have been waiting for your report. The entire council is here." The image widened, showing a room full of important people, generals, scientists, politicians. The leaders of Earth, all looking at him through a screen. Taiho felt the weight of 7 billion people on his shoulders. "Admiral," he said, "I have news that will change everything." For the next hour, he told them everything. He told them about the Queen, about the Void, about the shadow creatures that could not be killed. He showed them the recordings that Queen Nari had given him. He watched their faces change from curiosity to shock to fear. When he finished, the room was silent. Finally, Admiral Yuna spoke. "And the Queen believes that humans can help where others have failed." "Yes, Admiral. She believes that we have something the other species do not. The will to fight against impossible odds." "That sounds like desperation talking," one of the generals said. "We have no technology that can match the Valorans. If they cannot defeat this enemy, how can we?" "I do not know," Taiho admitted. "But I know this. If we do nothing, the Void will eventually reach Earth. Maybe not for 1,000 years. Maybe not for 10,000. But someday, it will come for us. And when it does, we will be alone." Another silence. Admiral Yuna leaned forward. "What exactly is the Queen asking for?" She wants an alliance. She wants our best scientists to work with her researchers, looking for new solutions. She wants our soldiers to join her forces, to bring new tactics and new ideas. She wants... Taiho paused. She wants to know that humanity will stand with her, even if there is no hope of victory. That is a lot to ask from a species she has never even spoken to before. I know, Admiral, but I have spent 3 days with her. I have seen the fear in her eyes. The Valaran Empire is the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, and their queen is terrified. She has nowhere else to turn. Taiho stood straighter. She came to us because we are her last hope. The leaders of Earth looked at each other. Taiho could see them weighing the risks, calculating the costs, trying to decide what was best for humanity. One of the scientists, a woman named Dr. Hannah, spoke up. If we had access to Valoran technology, we could advance our own research by centuries. The opportunity for scientific exchange alone would be worth the partnership. And if we helped them defeat this enemy, we would gain the most powerful ally in the galaxy, Admiral Yuna added. Earth would no longer be alone among the stars. But the risks, a politician said. If we join this fight and fail, we could lose everything. Our best people, our resources, our future. Taiho could not stay silent. With respect, sir, we will lose everything anyway if we do nothing. The Void does not care about our politics. It does not negotiate. It does not make treaties. It just consumes. We can hide from it for a while, but not forever. He looked directly at the screen, at all the faces watching him. I am just a lieutenant. I do not have the authority to make this decision, but I can tell you what I believe. I believe that humans have always been at our best when facing the impossible. I believe that our greatest achievements have come from refusing to accept defeat. And I believe that if there is any species in this galaxy that can find a way to stop the Void, it is us. Admiral Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled a small, tired smile. You have your father's stubbornness, Taiho. Taiho blinked. You knew my father? We served together many years ago. He was the most stubborn man I ever met. He never gave up on anything, no matter how hopeless it seemed. She paused. He would have been proud of you today. Taiho felt his eyes grow wet. His father had died when he was young. He barely remembered him. Admiral Yuna stood up. The council will need time to make a formal decision. But I can tell you this. We will not refuse the Queen's request. Earth will stand with the Valoran Empire. We will fight this enemy together. A wave of relief washed over Taiho. Thank you, Admiral. Do not thank me yet, Lieutenant. You have just volunteered humanity for the most dangerous mission in history. Her eyes were serious but kind. Are you ready for what comes next? Taiho thought about the shadow creatures, about the worlds that have been erased from existence, about the impossible task that lay ahead. No, he said honestly. But I will be. Admiral Yuna nodded. Good answer. Stand by for further orders. Earth will be in touch soon. The screen went dark. Taiho turned to find Queen Nari standing behind him. She had watched the entire conversation. There were tears on her silver cheeks. You did it, she whispered. You actually convinced them. They convinced themselves, Taiho said. They just needed to know there was someone worth fighting for. The Queen stepped forward and embraced him. It was unexpected, and Taiho did not know how to respond. The most powerful being in the galaxy was hugging him like he had saved her life. Thank you, she said softly. Thank you for giving us hope. Taiho put his arms around her and held her as she cried. Outside the window, the stars continued to shine. And somewhere in the darkness, the Void waited. But for the first time in centuries, it would not wait alone. Humanity was coming. Taiho stood on the balcony with the Queen of 12 star systems. And he talked about Earth. He told her about the oceans. She wanted to see great blue waters that covered most of his planet, full of life, both beautiful and dangerous. He told her about the mountains that touched the clouds, about the deserts where nothing grew, about the forests so thick that sunlight could not reach the ground. He told her about rain. On Valora, water fell from the sky only once every 100 years. On Earth, it happened every day in some places. The Queen listened with wide eyes, like a child hearing a fairy tale. Water just falls from the sky? She asked. Whenever it wants? Yes, Your Majesty. Sometimes it falls so hard that you cannot see anything in front of you. We call it a storm. And you go outside during these storms? Tai-Ho smiled. Sometimes. When I was a boy, I used to run outside when the storms came. I would let the rain hit my face and pretend I was swimming in the sky. The Queen shook her head in wonder. Your world sounds like a paradise. It is not, Tai-Ho said. His smile faded. Earth is beautiful, yes, but it is also hard. We have earthquakes that destroy cities. We have floods that wash away homes. We have winters so cold that people freeze to death in the streets. He paused. And we have war. War. The Queen spoke the word softly. We have not had war in the Valoran Empire for 800 years. Tell me about human war. Tai-Ho was quiet for a moment. He thought about how to explain something so terrible to someone who had never known it. Humans have always fought, he said. From the very beginning, we fought over food, over land, over ideas. We have invented 1,000 ways to kill each other. We have destroyed cities and ended millions of lives. He looked down at his hands. Some people say we are a violent species, that we cannot help ourselves. Do you believe that? I do not know. What I do know is that every time we destroy something, we also build something new. Every war ends with people choosing peace. Every disaster brings people together to help each other. He looked up at the stars. We are not a perfect species. We make terrible mistakes. But we never give up. We never stop trying to be better. The Queen was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, more serious. Tell me about the wars you have fought in space. Tai-Ho frowned. We have not fought any wars in space. We only discovered faster than light travel 5 years ago. We have barely begun to explore. I know, but you will fight. Someday, someone will attack your planet. Someone will try to take what is yours. When that happens, what will humans do? The question surprised Tai-Ho. He thought about it carefully. We will fight back, he said. We will fight with everything we have. Even if we are smaller. Even if we are weaker. Even if we have no hope of winning. He looked at the Queen. That is what humans do. We do not surrender. We do not give up. Even when the whole universe is against us, we keep fighting until the very end. The Queen's golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. Yes, she said softly. That is what I have read. That is what I hope to hear. Your Majesty? What do you mean? The Queen turned to face him fully. Her expression was serious now, all traces of playfulness gone. I did not come to speak with you because I was curious, Lieutenant Tai-Ho. I came because I need your help. Tai-Ho felt his stomach drop. My help? Your Majesty, I am just one man. What could I possibly do for the ruler of 12 star systems? Not you alone, humanity. The Queen took a deep breath. The Valoran Empire is dying. The words hung in the air like a cold wind. Dying? Tai-Ho repeated. But you are one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Your technology is centuries ahead of everyone else. How could you be dying? There are things older than technology, the Queen said. There are enemies older than empires. She walked to the edge of the balcony and pointed to a dark patch of sky. No stars shone there. It was like a hole in the universe, a place where light itself was afraid to go. Do you see that darkness? We call it the void. It is not empty. Something lives there. Something that has existed since before the first stars were born. Taiho felt a chill run down his spine. What is it? We do not know. We only know what it does. It consumes. It destroys. It takes worlds and turns them to nothing. No ship that enters the void ever returns. The Queen's voice was heavy with pain. For 1,000 years, the void has been growing. Slowly, year by year, it spreads outward. It has already consumed 3 of our colonies. Billions of my people, gone in an instant. Why have I never heard of this? Because we have kept it secret. If the galaxy knew that the great Valorn Empire was helpless against this threat, chaos would follow. Other empires would see us as weak. They would attack. Wars would break out across 100 systems. The Queen shook her head. We have been fighting alone, trying to find a way to stop the void. We have failed. Taiho did not understand. But why come to me? Why come to humanity? We have nothing. No great fleet. No advanced weapons. We cannot help you fight an enemy that your empire cannot defeat. The Queen smiled, but it was a sad smile. You are wrong, Lieutenant. Humans have something that no other species in this galaxy has. What? The will to fight the impossible. She walked closer to him. I have studied your history. I have read about your wars, your disasters, your darkest hours. And do you know what I learned? I learned that humans never give up. When faced with extinction, you fight harder. When everything seems hopeless, you find a way. She reached out and touched his chest, right above his heart. Other species surrender when they cannot win. They accept defeat. They make peace with death. But humans? Her eyes burned with intensity. Humans rage against the darkness. You refuse to die quietly. You make your enemies pay for every inch of ground, even when there is no ground left to defend. Taiho felt his heart pounding under her hand. Your Majesty, I have asked every empire in this galaxy for help. The Naruli said no. The Crystal Collective said no. The Iron Alliance said no. They all looked at the void, calculated their chances, and decided that fighting was pointless. Her voice cracked with emotion. But I do not believe that. I cannot believe that. There must be a way to stop this enemy. There must be something that can be done. She stepped back and looked at him with desperate hope. Humanity has only known about the galaxy for 5 years. You are small and weak and alone. By every logical measure, you should run from this fight. You should hide on your little planet and pray that the void never finds you. She paused. But I do not think you will do that. I think if I tell your people about this threat, they will not run. They will not hide. Her voice was barely a whisper. I think they will fight. Taiho thought about Earth. He thought about his family, his friends, his home. He thought about what would happen if the void kept growing, how someday, maybe in 100 years, maybe in 1,000, it would reach his world and consume everything he loved. He thought about all the heroes in human history, the soldiers who had charged into impossible battles, the scientists who had worked through the night to solve unsolvable problems, the ordinary people who had become extraordinary when the world needed them most. The Queen was right. Humans did not give up. What do you need from us? He asked. The Queen's face lit up with hope. I need warriors who will not run. I need minds that will not accept defeat. I need a species that will look at the end of everything and say, no. She extended her hand to him. I need humanity, Lieutenant Taiho. Will you help me save the galaxy? Taiho looked at her hand. He thought about everything that had led him to this moment. All the times he had felt small and unimportant. All the times he had wondered if humans had any place among the stars. Now he knew the answer. He took her hand. Yes, Your Majesty. We will help you." And in that moment, standing on a balcony at the edge of space, everything changed. The silence in the Great Hall was total. Every being, from every corner of the galaxy, had stopped talking. They all stared at the same impossible sight. Queen Nari, ruler of the Valoran Empire, sitting in a dark corner next to a human. Taiho felt like he could not breathe. His heart was pounding so hard that he was sure the queen could hear it. He sat frozen in his chair, afraid to move, afraid to speak, afraid to do anything that might break whatever strange spell had brought her to him. Queen Nari did not seem to notice the stares. She sat with her back straight and her hands folded in her lap, looking perfectly calm. The tiny stars in her crown continued to orbit her head, casting soft light on her silver skin. "You are Lieutenant Taiho of Earth," she said. It was not a question. Taiho found his voice. "Yes, Your Majesty." The words came out rough and dry. "How did you know my name?" "I know the name of every guest at this ceremony," the Queen said. "It is my duty as host, but there are hundreds of guests." 742, she said. "Your name was the last on the list. Taiho, it is a good name. Does it have a meaning in your language?" Taiho nodded slowly. "It means great and vast. Like the ocean." The Queen smiled. "The ocean. Water that covers a world. We have no oceans on Valora. Only great lakes of silver liquid that glow under our 3 moons." She paused. "I would like to see an ocean someday." Taiho did not know what to say. He had expected many things from this ceremony, but talking about oceans with a galactic queen was not one of them. Around them, the other guests had started whispering. Taiho could feel their eyes on him like heat from a fire. He saw beings pointing at him, leaning close to each other, asking questions with their looks. Who was this human? Why was the Queen talking to him? What could a creature from such a small and unimportant world possibly have to offer? 2 of the Queen's guards had followed her across the hall. They stood a few meters away, their hands on their weapons, their eyes watching Taiho with suspicion. They clearly did not like their ruler sitting so close to a stranger. "Your Majesty," Taiho said carefully, "I am honored by your attention, but I do not understand why you have come to speak with me. I am no one important. I am just a soldier from a small planet." Queen Nari turned to look at him. Her golden eyes seemed to see through him, into his thoughts, into his soul. "That is exactly why I came to speak with you," she said. "Because you believe you are no one important." Taiho frowned. "I do not understand." The Queen looked out at the crowd. "Do you see all these beings? The kings and queens, the generals and admirals, the leaders of 1,000 worlds? They are all important. They all believe they are important. And they all want something from me." She turned back to Taiho. "You do not want anything from me. You do not expect anything from me. When I walked into this hall, every being looked at me with desire for power, for alliance, for favor. But you?" She smiled again. "You did not even look at me. You were looking at the stars." Taiho felt his face grow warm. "I am sorry, Your Majesty. I did not mean to be disrespectful." "You were not disrespectful. You were honest. You did not pretend to be interested in me when you were not." The Queen's voice was soft. "Do you know how rare that is? To meet someone who is simply honest." Taiho did not answer. He did not know what answer she wanted. Queen Nari leaned back in her chair. "I have been a queen for 217 years. In that time, I have met millions of beings from thousands of worlds. They have all wanted something from me. They have all smiled and bowed and said pretty words, but behind their eyes, I could see the hunger. The calculations. The plans." She sighed. "I am tired of being wanted for what I can give. Sometimes I just want to sit with someone who asks for nothing." Taiho thought about her words. He thought about what it must be like to live for over 200 years, surrounded by people who only saw you as a source of power. He thought about never knowing if someone's kindness was real or just a mask. "That sounds lonely," he said. The queen looked at him with surprise. Then she laughed a real laugh, warm and soft. "Yes," she said, "it is lonely. But you are the first person to say so out loud." They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the whispers continued. Taiho saw some of the important guests moving closer, trying to hear what the queen was saying. The guards were still watching him with hard eyes. "May I ask you a question, Your Majesty?" Taiho said. "Of course. How did you notice me?" "This hall is huge. I was sitting in the darkest corner. You were on your throne, far away. How did you even see me?" Queen Nari smiled mysteriously. "Because you were the only being in this hall who was not trying to be seen. Everyone else was standing tall, wearing their finest clothes, pushing forward to get my attention. But you?" She pointed at his simple uniform. "You wore plain clothes. You chose the worst seat. You tried to disappear, and that made you interested? It made me curious. In my experience, there are two kinds of beings who try to disappear. The first kind are cowards who are afraid of the world. The second kind are warriors who have learned that silence is more powerful than noise." Her golden eyes met his. "You do not look like a coward to me, Taiho of Earth." Taiho felt something stir in his chest. Pride, maybe, or surprise that anyone would see him as anything other than a messenger from an unimportant world. "I am just a soldier," he said. "I follow orders. I do my duty. There is nothing special about me." "And yet you are here," the queen said. "Alone, the only human in a hall of giants, sent by your people to represent an entire world. Do you know what that tells me about you?" Taiho shook his head. "It tells me that your people trust you. It tells me that when they needed someone to face the unknown, they chose you. A young soldier with no fame and no power, but with something more valuable." She leaned closer. "Courage." Taiho did not know how to respond. On Earth, he was ordinary. He had no special skills, no great achievements. He had been chosen for this mission because he was available, not because he was the best. But hearing the queen's words, he began to wonder if maybe there was more to it. "Your Majesty is very kind," he said finally. "But I think you give me too much credit, and I think you do not give yourself enough." The queen stood up suddenly. The movement made everyone in the hall turn to look. "Walk with me," she said. It was not a request. Taiho stood up on shaking legs. The queen began to walk toward the center of the hall, and he followed her. The crowd parted before them like waves before a ship. Every eye was on them. Every voice was silent. Taiho felt like he was walking through a dream. A few hours ago, he had been invisible. Now, he was walking beside the most powerful being in the galaxy, and everyone was watching. The queen led him to a balcony at the edge of the hall. It looked down into space, offering a view of stars and distant galaxies. She stood at the railing and looked out at the infinite darkness. "Tell me about Earth," she said. Taiho stood beside her. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Tell me about your world. Tell me about your people. Tell me why humans are different from all the other species I have met." Taiho took a deep breath. He looked out at the stars and thought about his home. He thought about blue skies and green forests, about cities and farms, about wars and peace. And he began to talk. The Great Hall of Station Orion was the most beautiful place Taiho had ever seen. Crystal pillars rose from the floor to the ceiling, each one filled with floating lights that changed color like slow-moving rainbows. The ceiling itself was made of glass, and through it, He could see 1,000 stars shining in the blackness of space. Taiho stood near the entrance, wearing his simple Earth military uniform. It was clean and pressed, but compared to the clothes of the alien guests around him, it looked plain and poor. He was a lieutenant in Earth's small space fleet, sent here only because someone had to come. Earth was new to the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. To the older species, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. The ceremony was called the Galactic Unity Gathering. Every 10 years, representatives from all known species came together to celebrate peace and cooperation among the stars. There were hundreds of guests in the hall, and Taiho recognized almost none of them. He saw tall beings with blue skin and 4 arms. He saw small creatures that floated in the air, their bodies made of what looked like living smoke. He saw beings covered in golden scales, and others with skin like polished metal. Each group wore clothes that sparkled with jewels and technology far beyond anything Earth could make. No one looked at Taiho. No one came to greet him or shake his hand. He was invisible, a ghost among giants. He walked slowly through the crowd, trying not to bump into anyone. The aliens moved around him like water flowing around a small stone. They did not push him or insult him. They simply acted as if he was not there at all. Taiho found this worse than open hatred. At least hatred meant you mattered. He made his way to the seating area. Hundreds of chairs were arranged in a great circle, facing a raised platform where the ceremony would take place. The best seats were near the front, and they were already filled with the most important guests. Taiho saw beings wearing crowns and medals, surrounded by servants and guards. He did not go near those seats. Instead, he walked to the far side of the hall, where the lighting was dim and the chairs were mostly empty. He found a seat in the very last row, in the corner where 2 walls met. It was a seat meant for no one important. It was perfect. Taiho sat down and let out a long breath. His mission was simple: attend the ceremony, represent Earth, and return home. No one expected him to make friends or form alliances. No one expected anything from him at all. He watched the other guests find their seats. The ceremony would begin soon. On the raised platform, he could see a large throne made of white crystal. That was where the queen would sit. Queen Nari of the Valoran Empire, Taiho, had read about her during his journey to Station Orion. The Valorans were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the known galaxy. They controlled 12 star systems and had technology that made Earth's best machines look like toys. Queen Nari had ruled for over 200 years. She was respected by all, feared by many, and loved by her people. In the pictures Taiho had seen, she looked almost human. The Valorans had 2 arms, 2 legs, and faces with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. But their skin was pale silver, and their eyes glowed with soft light. They were taller than humans, and they moved with a grace that seemed impossible. Taiho watched as Queen Nari entered the hall. The crowd fell silent. Every being turned to look at her. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Her silver skin seemed to glow from within, and her eyes burned with golden light. She wore a simple white dress that flowed around her like water, and on her head sat a crown of living stars, tiny points of light that orbited her head like planets around a sun. She walked slowly through the hall, nodding to guests as she passed. Everyone bowed to her. Everyone whispered her name with respect. Taiho did not bow. He was too far away, too hidden in his dark corner. She would never see him. She would never know he existed. The queen reached the platform and stood before her throne. She did not sit. Instead, she turned to face the crowd. "Welcome, friends," she said. Her voice was soft, but it filled the entire hall. "Welcome to the Galactic Unity Gathering. Today, we celebrate what we have built together: peace, cooperation, trust. The crowd clapped politely. Taiho sat in silence. The queen continued speaking. She talked about the history of the gathering, about the wars that had ended, and the treaties that had been signed. She spoke of hope and unity and a future where all species worked together. Taiho listened, but her words felt empty to him. Unity? Cooperation? Earth had received no help from the galaxy. When humans had first reached out to the stars, they had been met with silence. When they had asked to join the galactic community, they had been ignored. Only after years of effort had they received a single invitation to this ceremony, and even then, they had been told to send only one representative, one human, alone, to represent an entire world. Taiho was not angry. He understood. Earth was small and weak. Earth had nothing to offer. In the eyes of the galaxy, humans were not enemies or friends. They were nothing. The queen finished her speech and finally sat on her throne. The crowd clapped again, and then everyone began talking among themselves. The formal part of the ceremony was over. Now came the informal part. The conversations, the deals, the alliances made over glasses of wine. Taiho stayed in his seat. He had no one to talk to. He had nothing to offer. He looked up at the glass ceiling and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning in the darkness. His home, his people. 7 billion humans who had no idea how small they were in the vastness of space. He wondered if he should just leave. No one would notice. No one would care. But then something strange happened. The queen stood up from her throne. Taiho watched as she said something to her guards. They looked surprised, but they stepped aside. The queen walked down from the platform and entered the crowd. This was unusual. In events like this, rulers usually stayed on their thrones. They let others come to them. They did not walk among the common guests, but Queen Nari was walking, and she was not stopping to talk to the important beings near the front. She was moving past them, deeper into the hall. Taiho felt a strange feeling in his chest. It was probably nothing. She was probably going to speak with some other dignitary, someone important hiding in the back, but she kept walking. She moved past group after group, ignoring the bows and greetings of those around her. She was coming toward his corner of the hall. Taiho's heart began to beat faster. No, that was impossible. Why would the queen of 12 star systems come to speak with him? But she was getting closer. Her golden eyes were fixed on something ahead of her. They were fixed on him. Taiho stood up without thinking. His legs felt weak. His mouth felt dry. He did not know what to do. Should he bow? Should he speak? Should he run? Queen Nari stopped in front of him. Up close, she was even more beautiful. The light in her eyes was warm, like sunshine on a cold day. She smiled. "Is this seat taken?" she asked, pointing to the empty chair beside him. Taiho could not speak. He could only shake his head. The queen of the Valoran Empire sat down next to him in the dark corner of the hall, far from her throne and her guards and her important guests, and the whole galaxy watched in shock.